Hey, how's it going? I'm Dan Fredenberg, and this is the Gringo Salado Pod. It is Jerry Lococo's show here. I'm here to tee him off with the better questions, so let's start with an easy question. Jerry, how you doing today?
What's up, Dan? Good, man. It's always an interesting day with a big family, so there's always something that you don't plan for, but it's a good day.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Now, the topic for today that we want to talk about, there's a few as a whole. The first one has to be coming from the fact that you're a Catholic. And so I think one of the things you really need to do to support and build your audience is you need to let people know where else can people be looking. Now, I know that we've done some research. I went through the stuff that you sent along here, but I'd rather put the ball in your court as far as what's a good source you find for Catholic resources. If you want to say, if you get benefit from things that are not necessarily Catholic, that's a perfectly fine tee off. But if people are looking for people who have their head in the right direction as far as right and wrong, responsibility, things like that, what are some sources out there that you're aware of?
There's one that comes to mind right away because it helped me tremendously. And so it's the Institute of Catholic Culture. And so, it was probably almost 10 years ago. I don't even know how I found it. Maybe it was a Google search or something. But they have amazing content on there. It's a lot of recorded videos. For example, the one that I'm speaking is, thinking about specifically was an interview by a gentleman by the name of Dr. John Cuddeback. And in that interview, he talks about the idea of causa sui. And it's a Latin term that essentially means like self-moving, but it's not self-moving in the sense of like somebody like Ubermensch by like Nietzsche or something like that. But it's more along the lines of essentially there are two freedoms: the freedom of choice and the freedom of excellence. And God gave all of us the freedom of choice so that we may pursue and obtain the freedom of excellence. And then the question becomes, well, how do you do that? And that's why by living a life of virtue, prudence, justice, fortitude, temperance, faith, hope, and charity, or love. And so, I mean, that one episode changed everything for me when I was really trying to find my way in the world and in the church. I was incredibly lost. That was the first time I'd ever heard of such a thing. Of being, the maker of your own destiny, but it's not in the same sense that you would think, especially in the world today when it thinks, I'm going to do this on my own. And it's like you have the choice to pursue this path. You've been given one freedom so that you may pursue the most important freedom.
I love that. So one thing that I should probably mention, I'm sitting here looking at the screen, I'm noticing that I've got my real estate as a scam hat on, and hard to believe with a hat like that, but I could be interpreted as being a little bit of a contrarian. In other words, yes. if someone says jump, we all be like, okay, do we really have to jump? It's just, like whatever the other side is, it helps me understand things. It also helps me memorize things because I focus on exceptions and things like that. So before we go on to some other resources that Catholics will likely enjoy, why don't we talk about the spectrum of content out there that's made by Catholics for Catholics, or even the general public? And the two extremes, I'd say, would be the ones that are basically looking to get a sermon in every piece of content. They're never going to have any issue by repetition of, I'm going to go ahead and call it dogma. In other words, there are some things about religions that really outside of the true believers, whatever you want to call them, they're going to have some trouble accepting some of this, or maybe they'll find it a little bit too dry. So that's one edge of the spectrum. The other one would be where they are Catholic, but it doesn't come up much. Like I think that you're like kind of in between, maybe a little bit towards the second one, especially in Gringo Salado, which is available on Amazon.com. You should definitely get your copy. It's a fantastic memoir, especially if you've ever had difficulties with your own youth, the situations that you've dealt with before, and or if you know somebody else who has something similar to that and you need to find a way to get past it. Don't let it define you. Make sure that you move on and do the work that can create a better life, a better world, and all those sorts of things. So that's where, so maybe you wouldn't agree with me that you're closer to the center of those two poles there, but does that sound like a fair description, or do you have some examples of each edge of that spectrum?
Yeah. So when I first started learning about the faith and I started taking it serious, I had this desire, and is a zeal to like want to prove to other people why it was true, and so I would buy books so that I could learn the arguments, so that I could win arguments, and then I was going to save people, I was going to lead people to the truth, and part of that has to do, but there's good in that. I believe as Catholics, we are supposed to lead people to the truth. And I had people do that for me, and I can see how it benefited my life and helped me. But at the same time, I think where this becomes problematic is when it becomes about satiating and feeding an ego, or maybe helping you with your still lingering lack of belief. It's like, well, if this person doesn't agree with me, then that's going to impact how I believe. And so you have, as you grow in the faith, at least for me, and I believe this is true, I think you start to put the heart and the soul of the person that you're talking to above your need to be right, and above any kind of petty arguments, and you realize that at the end of the day, it's about saving souls, right? Leading people to the truth. And so if you come out of the gate and it's all ego, and you pushing people further away from what you believe to be true, then are you really accomplishing that goal? And so the first version of Gringo Salado was very much like, here's a story, here's the lesson, and the rule, and then here's some base quote from some Catholic saint. I was just gonna like punch you in the face with the truth, like I'm gonna, and it's like, and so that's just part of the writing process. And so, talking to the editor, of course, who helped me, but then also just realizing, like, who am I ultimately writing this for? Yes, I'm writing it for myself to heal. It was incredibly healing, writing it for my children, but I'm also writing it for the people to try and help them, help lead them away from some of these terrible worldviews today that just lead to just absolute misery and suffering. And so in order to do that, you have to, again, the idea of causa sui, right? So you want people to use their freedom. It has to be a free choice, and you don't want to co-opt that freedom, right? And there's a delicate balance there between not speaking the truth and still not saying it in a way that pushes them further away from, from not using their freedom appropriately, if that makes sense, right? And it's not like it's a one size fits all. We're all different. We all have different temperaments. We all have different wounds. We all come from different places. And so when you say like, well, you're more in the middle, I would say it's not because I started in the middle. I would say definitely was more right wing when I first, got reinvigorated for the faith. But then as you grow You start to realize, who is this for? You it's not like you're not trying to trick people either. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like you're trying to trick people. It's just you realize where people are coming from. You got to meet them where they're at. Well, you meet them where they're at, but you don't. And this is the hard part too, because eventually, even if you're not intending to, when you speak the truth, that still might offend people. And so, but I think the most important part is you have to make it. You have to really try really hard to make sure they understand that it's about them, and then it's you really try to format what you're saying oriented towards love. That's hard.
Yeah, it definitely is, and I'm glad that you hit the saying of meet people where they're at, because that's what I was going to throw in as far as a summary of what you're saying. Now, of course, you and I both depend on the business of real estate to keep our lights on, and that's sort of a separate thing. But one of the nice things about that sector, especially if you do go to conferences, you talk to speakers who are focusing on more deals, more this, more that, more everything else. Every once in a while they have some pithy one-liners that are pretty good. And I think they're pretty good because they work in a bunch of different situations, and not necessarily the one that they're talking about is the best one. So meeting people where they're at. Another way of thinking about it in sales, or especially if you're raising capital for real estate deals, they say that you can't say the wrong thing to the right person, and you can't say the right thing to the wrong person. In other words, if you're meeting them where they're at, then like there's a good chance that you can't even bring up the subject. And so like me, my orientation as somebody who I've studied about a half dozen or so different versions of Christianity, a pretty cursory knowledge of about 3 different versions of Islam. Then of course there's Buddhism, Hinduism, and Taoism. And so I took a deep dive into those. And so because of that, I think that the way to kind of keep it in balance and not be so pushy to convert people is to start with, okay, can we do being a nice person? Can we go for being a nice person, and then maybe you'll start coming along and turning around, or at least not victimize other people would be another example. As far as when I'm trying to interact with people as what do you want to call it, the contrarian or whatever. That's what I try and get. What are some thoughts on that before we go to some more of these different sources of content?
No, I mean, I think it's I don't know. I was talking to my oldest this morning, and I was telling her, with respect to the faith, Thomas Aquinas says, like, the beginning of true faith, or true faith's beginning is when you really actually start questioning. It's like, and I was telling my daughter, it's like, you're going to, at some point, I hope that I'm trying to teach you, right? That's what we're supposed to do as parents. We've lived some life, we have some wisdom, hard-fought things that we've learned, and we want to pass that stuff on to our children and help them out of love. But some of these things in life are things that you have to learn. You have to learn on your own as well. And I don't want her to be Catholic just because I told her that. And here's an example for me. So I was frustrated with the church for a lot of reasons. There's a lot of good reasons to be frustrated with the church. So I met this guy who's a real estate developer out of San Diego, and he had an amazing story. The guy, he was worth like 50, 60 million or something like that in 2006, 2007. And he went from 50, 60 million net worth to -10 in 2008. And I read his story, and it was just inspiring to me, like how he didn't quit. Like he stuck it out, did all these workouts with his lenders, and did all these amazing, where everyone was quitting. this guy stuck it out, right? And I was like, this guy has something special. I want to know what he's like. What is he reading? Well, he turned me on to what was called the Vedanta, which is, I think that's Hindu, right? That's some type of yeah, it's something. I'm not exactly sure how. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he put me on. He's like, hey, read this book. So I started reading these books. One of them is called Governing Business and Decisions, I think it's called. So I started reading it, and there's this, basically what it is virtue ethics. And I just couldn't believe what I was reading, because I had never been exposed to any such thing, right? Because I was really struggling at the time with like how to be. I didn't even have the vocabulary, really. It was like how to be a good person in business. Really what I was trying to say, how to be a virtuous man in the business world. That's really what I was trying to understand, but I didn't have the vocabulary. I didn't have the formation. And so he exposed me to this work, and I was just like, man, this is amazing. And what it did was it opened me up. I was like, wow, I didn't understand this world exists. And then I was exposed to Thomas Aquinas. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. I had no idea that this was Catholicism, because I hadn't been exposed to, happy clappy, guitars and drums. And I'm sorry, I know people get upset about this, but it's like, no, there was just nothing there. Like, no, here I'm in business. I've got a young family. I'm trying to be successful, and I don't want to lose my soul in the process. And I'm finding no answers in the church, right? None, no answers in the church. And then I get exposed to these writings by Thomas Aquinas, and I'm like, well, where the hell was this at? I had no idea, and it was like water to a desert. Like water to a desert. And it's like, well, I almost left the church because I didn't know that this is what the church has the answers for me. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I got on that path from a different, a totally different, school of thought that has, that's where what Catholics would say, well, is, there are truths in these religions, right? As a Catholic, I believe that, because I believe that Jesus Christ was real, like we've talked about before. C.S. Lewis, says is, he was a liar, a lunatic, or he was Lord, and that's kind of the path that I went on. And so I guess a roundabout way to answer your question is like, I think, God can find us anywhere, but that also doesn't mean that there's not truth.
Yeah, it's I definitely love that. You got me thinking about three different things here. The first one was just sharing with the audience my own orientation towards Jesus and his teachings, and specifically for me, I was aware of Protestantism. I knew about Martin Luther, and so I knew about selling indulgences. So obviously there's some sort of corruption in the 1,000+ years of Christianity. And you could say 2,000. I know that like a lot of the gospels were most likely written about 150 years after his death, that sort of thing, right? But so I was really concerned about dogma, and I was also really concerned about how, I know we were talking about it last time. Albert Einstein is this genius, but apparently he wasn't that nice of a guy to his family. So basically, like, it's not a one size fits all. People aren't perfect, like you were saying in the previous bit of content there. But like, that just wasn't good enough for me, and that brought me to Pascal's wager, which, like, that bugged me a fair bit. Now, I understand that historically Pascal's wager was actually presented to show that logic alone has its limitations. Sometimes it's just really poorly suited, and he used that example of if God doesn't exist and you believe, you're not going to get punished. However, if God does exist and you don't believe, then you will. Then it makes sense to just go ahead and believe anyway. Like that hit me as a cop out at the worst type, and I didn't hear that background, so that really bugged me. But the thing I'd like to add for people in the audience who don't have this much of a background, in Tibetan Buddhism specifically, I think they have the answer to why it's like, okay, why is it that to most people church equals, you know, drums and guitars and singing and clapping and being happy, and then there's this stuff in Catholicism, like Aquinas's work, where it's just a completely different thing. And in Tibetan Buddhism, they separate people into 3 different categories based on their proclivity in particular human personality traits. Okay, so they got the yellow hats, the red hats, and the black and the brown hats. I get the reds and the browns confused as far as the colors goes, but the reds and the browns, they'll either be for will. So they're very willful, and that's going to be their method to grow. Obviously, you have to have the other ones, but I think red was empathy, and then yellow was knowledge. So the idea being that you know, most people, they will go through feelings to get that transcendent sense of belonging in the world and in the universe. And so it doesn't matter if you're talking Christianity or Buddhism or otherwise. That's a human trait. Some people will need their heart to take them to God. When it comes to willpower, some people, you know, they need to have that reason to do it, and they're self-motivated and they'll work their butts off. But then the yellow hats are the ones that are a little bit more intellectual, so they would feed off of something like Aquinas's work and say, oh, this is the good stuff. I wish I'd been getting this right from the start, because this is something that I can really help. But to end it off, the only other thing I'd want to say is that even if you're not a Christian, the simplest ways, you know, like you look at Judaism as well, right? They have the golden rule, you know, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And of course, Taoism has the version of that that's put in the negative, which is don't do unto others as you wouldn't have them do unto you. And so personally, the simplest ethical standpoint that I can share with people is the combination of those two, because I've seen some people that they really wish that people do certain things to them, and so that would be okay for them to do those actions when it's totally not welcome.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that really frustrates me too, is because like at this point where I was just describing, when I started reading in Vedanta, I had graduated law school already. You know, whatever percentage of the population that is in terms of academic achievement. And you know what I did not know at the time? I did not know the idea that when you say die to self, what that means is you're aligning heart, intellect, and will. And right, and when you go to mass, that's literally like, well, it's like what you're supposed to be. Not necessarily it's the only thing that you're there for, but that is a big part where you're there for. You're not there for guitars and to like feel, you know. And I say this all the time. Like I love, you know, I listen to contemporary Christian music when I'm in my car. I think it's great. It's good for the soul. But when you're there talking about worshiping God, you're talking about saying like, Lord, make me smaller so that you let me decrease so that you may increase. You know, and actually trying to mean it. It's hard to like. You can say that, but we all don't want to do that. You know, that's the problem, is that we are selfish, and the issues that we have in the world is because we're selfish. And so aligning your heart, aligning your intellect, aligning your will is so critical. Having graduated law school and not knowing that's a travesty. There's the other thing too in the Western school is understanding there's 4 temperaments, basically 4 temperaments. This is from actually before Aristotle. I can't remember the gentleman. This even predates Aristotle. And so understanding what is your predominant temperament. You know, I am a choleric, and my secondary is a melancholic. You know, I was 40 years old before I knew that about myself. I thought, well, I'm Sicilian, so that's why I'm fiery. It's like, no, not all Sicilians are fiery. That's you don't even, it's like, so, and you spend so much time, I think we spend so much time trying to fix the things that we can't fix because of who we are, who we were made to be, right? And then we don't shore up the things that we can shore up because we don't know anything about our natural temperaments or what the goals of things that like worship and like what true worship means and why we go to church on Sundays and things like that. We've just totally lost a sense of who we are at the most basic levels. But but we have like, iPads though, when it's like, it's,
Yeah, that's true enough. And and of course, I think in some ways we're being a little bit reductive because like there are all types out there, right? Like some people's reactions, they're not so much that they're afraid of getting smaller before reality and basically putting their stuff to the side. Some people just wind up checking out, and that's something that we were discussing right before this call. Was the fentanyl issues in Arizona, alcoholism
everywhere, really. It's not just Arizona. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen it everywhere.
Here. I've seen it here in Ottawa. It's there. Even in downtown with the fanciest public buildings and stuff like that. You get those zombies. But that was also a major part of your story in Gringo Salado was just basically saying that like. Drowning yourself with alcohol, it's not a victimless crime. You think it is because you're doing it to yourself, but there are bystanders. Like sure, if you're living under a bridge, that's a little bit different, but that's kind of the exception rather than the rule. And those are some major things. And that's a subject that's really, really near and dear to my heart. And that's one of those things where I think converting people is more important for me than it is to convert them to a particular a type of religion or sect or something like that. Just like because like the damage is just so obvious. And so what I mean is I don't care where it comes from. Like I know one person I interviewed was Brian Cuban. He's Mark Cuban's brother, and he's a lawyer. Yeah, he's a lawyer and also a sobriety advocate. And he starts not with emotion, but really with facts, like for example, airborne exposure to fentanyl. Apparently that's not a real thing. You can't just be in a room with fentanyl and then just, be all loopy. That's not apparently how it works. But the reason why I bring that up is not only because of the prevalent role in substance abuse that's in Gringo Salado and the recovery from dealing with people who do too many substances. That's a major thing in there, and not letting it define you, making sure you move on and make something out of yourself instead of just being sorry for yourself. But in the different resources, the Catholic resources that you sent over here, one of them here is CatholicInRecovery.com. It's a podcast there that does substance abuse and addiction and recovery through a Catholic lens. Now, did you get a chance to look through any of their content? Is that something that you want to talk about?
I had seen some of those podcasts. I haven't actually watched them yet. I mean, but that is, I was actually on retreat recently, and they talked a lot about the 12 steps, and how it all relates back to the really asceticism. Catholic asceticism is really what it all amounts to, and so I mean that's the thing is I can't help but think, as I'm driving around and I see the human carnage, it's just reflective of people not having, they just have no hope. They're just I mean, they're literally checking out on life.
Yep.
They're gone. And these people, for hours, days, whatever it is at a time, they're not there, and they're dying in the streets. I mean, it's crazy. And so, and it's it's spiritual, it's I mean, I get people are suffering. I get it. Like, I mean, I understand. I mean, I don't understand everybody's level of suffering, and definitely people have suffered way more than I have, but I understand. And it's just sad just to watch this and to see people just destroy themselves, and it just doesn't seem to be like, that. I mean, there's good, government programs can help, but that's not that is really just band-aids of the situation. This is a spiritual problem,
Yeah.
and also, like we've talked about before too, is, I mean, I get the economic realities too for people. We have an economy that is just not serving the family, serving people. And I am not a socialist, but you can't drive around today and in the West. I haven't been to Canada, so I'm not sure what that looks like driving around. But at least where I've driven around the United States, and you can't drive around and say, "Oh, this thing is working great for people. This economy is working great for people."
Yeah.
Working great for some people, and it's not working great for most people. And if somebody wants to call me a socialist for using my eyes and to be able to perceive reality, then I guess that's fine. But I mean, I think you have to have your head in the sand today to not see that there's problems.
Yeah, I love that you say that, because I have the same issues. Like I like that. So I don't agree with this statement, but the statement, like there's some truth in it. They say that if you're young and you're not basically a socialist, then you have no heart. And then when you're older, if you don't end up becoming somewhat conservative, at least fiscally, then you have no brain. The way that this person was trying to say it is that a government tries to create problems and be the answer, and then the ones who benefit are the ones that already are fine, which is how it clearly seems to be in Yuma. The parts that ought to be opportunity zones absolutely are not opportunity zones. They're just ones that are making rich people richer, and that's a real tough one. But I think the word for what that we're struggling to find here is that too many people are disenfranchised. In other words, I guess the best way to look at it, because we got a little bit in that direction last time. We were talking, I remember bringing up the book called Why Nations Fail.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer was, and I'm going to give you a whole book and give you the shortest version ever. The short version is that nations fail when governments take too much, because people stop feeling like there's a good reason to succeed. There's a good reason to work hard to build something better tomorrow than there is.
They lose what? They lose hope.
Exactly. And so I think that like the problem with fentanyl, for example, I think it's more profound than just spiritual. I do think it's definitely financial as well. Part of it, of course, is, we love stories as people, and we're fed that, the boy meets girl, they fall in love, whatever. There's a lot of people that unfortunately are stuck being alone. We have these big hearts and we want to help a bunch of people, but we're never going to be financially in a position to actually do it. And even if we volunteer, we're just going to get told what to do, and we're going to be doing something with no impact. And so people choose these substances. Now, and of course, that's not everybody, but the thing is, like, that disenfranchised aspect, I think, is a lot of it.
Yeah, so, I was watching this podcast earlier this week, and they were talking about just that very issue. And I think a lot of this, and it also talks a lot about the same issue in the book Dreamland, where, in the 50s, there was a sense that these the corporations, the shoe manufacturing company, in, Steubenville, Ohio, or whatever, there was a sense of like corporate responsibility. to that community and to the employees that work there. And again, and not to say like it's just building up this like fake utopian idea that everything was perfect in the 50s or whatever, because it wasn't. There were challenges, but you can't deny that the world that we live in today is so transactional, and that these relationships in many ways, and obviously I think it's better the smaller the business, the better it is, because the closer those relationships can be. But I mean, it just doesn't go any deeper than it's a transaction. There doesn't seem to be the corporate sense of responsibility. Like, we're going to be here for 100 years, so we need to make sure that the education system here is worthwhile, because we want, obviously, yes, we have a profit motive here, because we want the people that come to work at our factory to be educated. But it's not just the profit motive. It's like, this is our home, this is our community. And that was the thing that I had, just such a frustration with, is being, when I was in Yuma, is being in a position to where you could see the issues, right? And I'm pointing out, it's like, wait a minute. Okay, opportunity zone. The whole point of this program was designed to help places like my hometown. So when it rolls out, why is it the net effect of this program to help the places that already command the majority of job growth in the state? I'm just asking a simple question here. Like, why is everything that's supposed to be help, it's pitched that we're going to help the little guy, but then in reality, it does not help the little guy. It helps the guys that are already ahead. And it's like, I get why people, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that leads to revolution, because, some people are going to check out on drugs, and some people are just going to go start burning stuff down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I just think it'd be better if we just treated each other, better. If we just, but again, but so I would push back on you when you said it's financial and it's not spiritual.
Oh yeah, I wasn't saying it wasn't. It's both, and that's the problem.
Well, I mean, I think it goes back again. Are we willing to die to self? Are we just looking out for our? You know what I mean? Are we actually looking at the work that we do in a way that advances human flourishing, or is this just about making money?
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm. So,
and I think that is 100% spiritual.
Yeah, it is, especially because I think if you were to, like, let's take the conglomerates. Okay, it's pretty clear that publicly traded companies that are conglomerates, these big monsters, they look at one town or one city and it's just the same as another. They don't care about any of the cities, and that's why they act the way that they do. Hopefully, like with AI or whatever, the ability for individuals to be nimble and create new services that compete with these big conglomerates would be absolutely fantastic. But in the meantime, like I completely agree with you that like we need to think differently. And I think one of the problems where a link to something transcendent is what the doctor ordered. It's because well, the fact is we're often not as strong as we hope we would be. We often allow our weaknesses to get the best of us, and then we end up making crappy, weak decisions that we would wish we had the strength not to do. So I'm talking about, the parents who abandon their family, the people who, even though they know that their employees are barely scraping by, they feel miserable all the time, and they can't just summon the strength to not take their next door neighbor who has the bigger yacht or the newer McLaren or whatever it is. I think that's one of the problems. And so I was saying that linking into something transcendental like a spiritual relationship is probably the best thing to basically get over yourself, find that strength. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I don't know that I would have I wouldn't have survived had I not had some basic understanding of that reality. That just the idea that I would pray. My grandparents, luckily my grandparents taught me that, at least that, and yeah, because it's a choice. Every day is a choice to, to keep pursuing, keep trying. It's writing the book. It's the same thing. Having the faith that whatever the effort that you put out today, you may not see the fruit of it tomorrow, but that at some point it will bear good fruit. It's make a worthy sacrifice and put your trust in the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
That's a way better way to look at life, and it's all BS, and it's all not worth it. And again, I'm not going to gaslight people today about everything's fine. Our government's working perfectly, and these corporations are just virtuous. It's like
too many smart people with great ideas. That's the problem, right?
It's obviously things are not working. We have a corrupt, financial system in many ways. But like the examples I use in the book, it's just how are we? One of the things is I got to a point in the book, like when I was living in Yuma, where I was so frustrated. Now, a lot of it had to do with ego, because I was making about myself, and that's bad. You don't want to be in that position. But I was so frustrated. I was very frustrated because I did want to do good, right? There was the ego part that I wanted to do it for myself, but there was also part of me that wanted to do it for the right reasons. I wanted to do it for other people. I wanted to help other people. I could see the wound. I could see the suffering, and I wanted to do something about it. And it was like at every step, it was being frustrated. And it was being, in many ways, frustrated by the people who are supposedly there to help alleviate that and help. The example I talk about in the book about higher education and the governor. Hey, we really need access to higher education here. What's your plan? As the governor tells me that. What's your plan? What the hell's your plan? You're the governor. Like why are you putting it back on me like I'm asking you for a can of soup? Why so really so basically what you're saying is if you want real opportunity, I have to move to Metro Phoenix. It's just and my situation, this is one of the things too, is like moving out of Yuma, living in Dallas for a few years and reading different news from different region of the country. You could see how the big, no matter where, the big are just taking advantage of the small, no matter where it is. And so I could be like, okay, well, at least I'm not alone in this, right? There's other people, and we see this, and this is not unique. This is happening everywhere, right? And so in many ways that actually gave me the ability to kind of pause and to reflect and to say, okay, well, so what the hell am I going to do with these feelings, this knowledge, these experiences? And I think turning it into a book that hopefully will help other people. It has helped other people so far, in a small way. Hopefully a big way for them, in a small way numerically so far. But that is a much better way to deal with these things that you're struggling with than to go get blasted or pick up gambling as a habit or smoking weed or checking out, right? This is a way better, Jordan Peterson says, it's like you want to be powerful or something like that, or something along those lines. You want to help the world, learn how to write, learn how to speak, be articulate, right?
Yeah, I love that because I remember like so many people, they have that saying where it's like, oh, if I could just help one person, and this is where I'm trying to be optimistic for everybody in the audience first, before we call it a day. The fact is that like you start off saying, if I could just make a difference with one person. Well, the answer is you absolutely can do that. That is absolutely a realistic goal, to help that one person. But after that, then you say, okay, let's scale it up a little bit. Let's help some more people, help them acquire their voice. And I think that when it comes to kindness and building a better society, the fact is pretty much all of us are powerless to make an enormous splash, but we can make an invisible enormous splash by paying it forward to our kids, paying it forward to our community, just giving those bits of kindness that, giving people a chance, because so many people, they're stuck where they are just because nobody's given them any sense of opportunity as well. Even so much as, like, if you're talking homeless people, unhoused people, whatever you want to call them, they're still living outside of a house. A shower and a shave is a big deal for them. So make sure you go out, pay it forward. You can make that difference. It is absolutely real. It is not fast, but it's
well, and the thing I would add to that, Dan, is that one of the lessons I learned is in writing that book, the process of healing those wounds, silence, prayer, reading, writing, identifying the wounds, writing about it, reading about it, trying to understand what did this event mean to me? How could I grow from it? What are you trying to show me here, Lord? And you take those, everybody's situation is different. Some of us are going to have even, severe wounds, and numerous ones. But each of those, as you identify, face, and heal them, then that is actually what's going to help you to be able to help other people. Because I think our desire to help other people is impacted by those unresolved wounds. It interferes with our relationships. It interferes with the way that we interact with people. It interferes with how we how we accept being rejected. We make us super sensitive. If you have these unresolved wounds, you're super sensitive to ridicule.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You're going to be, because you're trying to protect that stuff. And so the more, it's like you want to change the world, we'll go, and I remember hearing that quote and being like, I reject it. I want to go help the world. When I was probably 15 years ago, it's like, no, I'm good. I graduated law school. I got it all figured out. And it's like, no, you don't. You have, before you were going to go out and change the world, you're going to go help people. You got your own stuff you need to deal with. Now, that does not mean that you don't have a place in the world to help. But before you can really go help people, you gotta help yourself. You gotta heal those wounds. You gotta face that stuff. And I think, and again, like I'm just being honest. I didn't want to hear that message because I wanted to go out into the world and I wanted to go fix all the problems I could see, because I didn't want to face all the problems that were inside of me, right? And so I think that's kind of the one little nuance I would add to that little bit there is and we can, and it doesn't have to take 20, 30 years of your life, and you don't have to be in therapy for the rest of your life. Like, there's a way that we can use this stuff, that God will use these wounds to help you in your life and actually make your life more rich, more abundant. Now, I'm not talking about money, maybe that comes, but more abundant, more meaningful.
Exactly. More love from your community and the people around you too. That's great stuff. Anyway, thank you very much for watching today. This has been the Gringo Salado Pod. Both Jerry and I are available on LinkedIn. That's the best way to see us. But if you want to get your copy of Gringo Salado, go to Amazon.com, or you can go to jerrylococo.com. Do you have any other parting words before we give everybody the rest of their day there, Jerry?
Yeah, man. No, I'm just, on Twitter, the Gringo Salado, Twitter, what is it? Twitter,
the YouTube channel.
What are the other ones? YouTube. Yeah, all of them. I'm on all of them. Yeah. I don't use them, obviously, but we're on all of them.
Yep, exactly. Maybe when independent wealth comes along, then it could be all the time. But for now, it's we've got regular jobs to do in commercial real estate, especially
Yes.
in the South. So
Yes,
good
sir.
stuff. All right, thanks a lot.
Thanks,
Catch you
brother.
next time. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. It helps. All right.